I'm about to throw away a $1 billion empire for a woman I haven't spoken to in 12 years. Ryan Cole stood in the crowded town hall, champagne glass trembling in his hand, staring at the one person he'd spent over a decade trying to forget. Emily Harper, the girl he'd abandoned, the girl who'd never left this godforsaken town. And now, watching her smile politely at strangers across the room, something inside him cracked wide open. This is the story of how a billionaire single father lost everything that didn't matter and found the one thing that did. If you're watching from your city, drop a comment below so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and stick around until the end. The thing about coming home after 12 years is that nothing looks the same, but everything feels identical. Ryan Cole pressed his forehead against the tinted window of the black SUV as it rolled down Main Street, past the hardware store where he'd shoplifted batteries as a kid, past the diner where he'd washed dishes for minimum wage, past the Methodist church where his grandmother had dragged him every Sunday morning, whether he wanted to go or not. Pine Hollow, Georgia looked like someone had taken a photograph in 2014 and just left it there. Same chipped paint on the barbershop. Same crooked welcome sign at the town limits. Same judgment in the eyes of people who remembered him as that scrappy poor kid with holes in his sneakers and anger in his fists. Except now he was worth $1.3 billion, and the holes in his sneakers had been replaced by Italian leather that cost more than most of these people made in a month. Daddy, why does everything look so old here? Ryan glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror. 7-year-old Michaela had her face pressed against the opposite window, her dark curls pulled into 2 puffs that his nanny had spent 20 minutes perfecting that morning. She wore a velvet dress that cost $800. She had no idea what $800 meant. Because some places don't change, sweetheart, Ryan said. Some places just stay. Is that good or bad? Ryan didn't have an answer for that. The SUV pulled up to the town hall, a brick building that had been historic even when Ryan was a kid, which really just meant nobody had the money to tear it down and build something better. A banner hung across the entrance. Happy 80th birthday, Margaret Cole, his grandmother. The only person in this town who'd ever believed he'd amount to anything. The only person he'd stayed in contact with after he left. Remember what we talked about, Ryan said as his driver opened the door. Be polite. Say thank you. Don't mention how much anything costs. I know, Daddy. Michaela rolled her eyes with the exasperation of a child who'd heard this lecture too many times. You already told me like 100 times. I'm telling you 101. She giggled and took his hand as they stepped out into the humid Georgia evening. August in Pine Hollow felt like breathing through a wet blanket. Ryan had forgotten that. In San Francisco, where he'd built his company, the evenings were cool and foggy. Here, the air stuck to your skin and didn't let go. People were already staring. Ryan straightened his shoulders and walked toward the entrance, Michaela's small hand tight in his. He'd prepared for this. He'd known people would stare, would whisper, would measure the cost of his watch against their memories of the angry teenager who'd sworn he'd never come back. But he hadn't prepared for the weight of it. The way their eyes followed him like he was an exhibit in a museum. The way conversation stopped mid-sentence as he passed. Is that Ryan Cole? Heard he's worth billions now. Never thought he'd show his face here again. Look at that little girl. Pretty thing. Ryan's jaw tightened, but he kept walking, kept smiling, kept pretending he didn't hear them. Inside, the town hall had been decorated with streamers and balloons, the kind of cheap party supplies you bought in bulk from the dollar store. Long tables covered with plastic tablecloths held platters of fried chicken, potato salad, biscuits, sweet tea, and plastic pitchers. A far cry from the catered events Ryan attended in San Francisco, where individual plates cost more than this entire spread. And there, in the center of the room, sitting in a chair like a queen on a throne, was his grandmother. Margaret Cole was 80 years old and looked like she could still whip your ass if you gave her a reason. She wore a purple dress and a string of fake pearls. Her white hair curled and sprayed into submission, her dark eyes sharp as ever. When she saw Ryan, her face split into a smile that made his chest ache. "There's my boy," she called out, her voice carrying across the room. Ryan crossed to her, leaned down, and kissed her cheek. She smelled like the same perfume she'd worn his entire life, something floral and cheap and comforting. "Happy birthday, Grandma." "Took you long enough to get here." She grabbed his face with both hands, her grip surprisingly strong. 12 years. 12 years you stay away, and you think you can just waltz in here like nothing happened? I called every week. Calling ain't the same as being here, and you know it. But she was smiling, her eyes wet. Look at you, all grown up, all fancy. She turned her attention to Michaela, who was hiding slightly behind Ryan's leg. And this must be my great-granddaughter. Come here, child, let me see you. Michaela hesitated, then stepped forward. Margaret studied her with the intensity of someone reading a book.
You look like your mama, Margaret said finally. She was a beautiful woman. I'm sorry you lost her so young.
Michaela nodded, unsure what to say. She'd been 3 when her mother died. She barely remembered her. Go on and get yourself some food, Margaret said, patting Michaela's hand. The chocolate cake is the good kind, not that store-bought nonsense. As Michaela scampered off toward the dessert table, Margaret's expression shifted. She looked at Ryan the way she used to when he was 16 and came home with bruised knuckles. You doing okay, boy? I'm fine. That's not what I asked. Ryan exhaled slowly. His grandmother had always been able to see straight through him. I'm managing. Managing ain't the same as living. I'm here, aren't I? You're here because I guilted you into it. Margaret leaned back in her chair. When's the last time you did something because you wanted to, not because you had to? Before Ryan could answer, someone touched his shoulder. He turned and found himself face to face with Tommy Chen, who'd been his best friend in high school before Ryan had cut ties with everyone in Pine Hollow. Tommy had put on weight, his hairline had receded, but his smile was the same. Ryan Cole, Tommy said, shaking his head in disbelief. Man, I thought maybe you'd send a card or something. Didn't think you'd actually show up. Couldn't miss Grandma's birthday. Yeah, well... Tommy's smile faltered slightly. Good to see you, man. Really? There was an awkwardness between them, the ghost of a friendship that had died from neglect. Ryan had stopped returning Tommy's calls after the first year, had stopped responding to emails after the second. Eventually, Tommy had stopped trying. You look good, Ryan said, because he didn't know what else to say. You look rich, Tommy replied, and there was an edge to it. Heard you bought a house in Pacific Heights, that true? Yeah. Must be nice. The conversation died there. Tommy made an excuse about getting a drink and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Ryan standing alone in the middle of the room, surrounded by people who'd known him as a child and now looked at him like a stranger. This was a mistake. He shouldn't have come back. Ryan was about to collect Michaela and leave when the crowd near the entrance shifted and he saw her. Emily Harper. The world didn't stop. Time didn't slow down. All the romantic bullshit people said about seeing someone you used to love, that wasn't real. What happened was much simpler and much worse. Ryan forgot how to breathe. She stood near the door, half hidden behind a group of older women, wearing a dress that had probably come from a thrift store, her brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked older. Of course she did. 12 years had passed. But there was something else. A tiredness in her eyes. A weight to the way she held herself. She was talking to someone, nodding politely, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. And then, as if she could feel him staring, she looked up. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and Ryan felt something crack open inside his chest, something he'd spent 12 years building walls around. Emily's smile faltered. Her face went pale. For 3 seconds, they just stared at each other. 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then someone bumped into Ryan, breaking the spell, and when he looked back, Emily had turned away, disappearing into the crowd like she'd never been there at all. Daddy? Michaela was tugging on his sleeve, chocolate cake smeared on her face. Yeah, sweetheart. Can we go soon? I'm tired. Not yet, Ryan heard himself say. Not yet. He needed to find her. He needed to... What? Say hello? Apologize for leaving? Pretend the last 12 years hadn't happened? He didn't know. But he started moving through the crowd anyway, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't since he'd pitched his company to investors and bet everything he had on a dream. He found her near the punch bowl, standing alone, staring down at a plastic cup like it held the answers to the universe. Emily. She flinched but didn't turn around. Ryan. Just his name. Nothing else. But the way she said it, carefully, like handling broken glass, told him everything he needed to know. I didn't know you'd be here, Ryan said, which was a lie. He'd known she might be. He'd hoped she wouldn't be. He'd hoped she would be. He'd been at war with himself about it for weeks. It's a small town, Emily said. Everyone's here. Right, of course. Silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. Ryan had negotiated billion-dollar deals. He'd given keynote speeches to thousands of people. He'd fired executives and hired geniuses and built something from nothing. But standing next to Emily Harper, he felt like the same stupid kid who'd been too scared to tell her how he felt until it was too late. "You look good," he finally said. "No, I don't." Emily turned to face him, and up close the tiredness was even more visible. Dark circles under her eyes, a thinness to her face that hadn't been there before. "But thank you for lying." "I'm not—" "How long are you staying?" The question caught him off guard. "A few days, maybe a week." "And then back to San Francisco?" "Yeah." Emily nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing." She set down her cup. "I should go. I have work tomorrow." "Wait." Ryan caught her arm gently, and the moment he touched her, electricity shot through him. He released her immediately, but it was too late. They'd both felt it. "Can we talk? Just for a few minutes." "About what?" "I don't know. Anything. Everything. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself. "I haven't seen you in 12 years, Emily." "I know. I was there for all 12 of them." The bitterness in her voice was like a slap. "I'm sorry," Ryan said, "for not staying in touch, for disappearing, for—" "Don't." Emily held up a hand. "Don't apologize for building a life. You did what you had to do. You got out. That's what people are supposed to do." "You could have gotten out too." Emily's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Could I? You think everyone has the same choices you had?" "That's not what I meant." "I know what you meant." Emily's expression softened slightly. "Look, Ryan, I'm glad you're successful. I'm glad you're happy. I'm glad you got everything you wanted. But we're different people now. We live different lives. And trying to pretend otherwise just because we happen to be in the same room for the first time in 12 years it's pointless." "I don't think it's pointless." "Of course you don't, because you're Ryan Cole, and you believe you can fix anything." Emily picked up her cup again, then set it back down like she couldn't decide what to do with her hands. "But some things can't be fixed. Some things are just over." "Are we over?" The question hung in the air between them. Emily looked at him for a long moment, and Ryan saw something flicker in her eyes. Pain, longing, anger, all of it mixed together. "We never started," she said quietly. "So how can we be over?" Before Ryan could respond, an older woman approached, calling Emily's name. Emily turned away with visible relief, leaving Ryan standing alone by the punch bowl, feeling like he'd just lost something he'd never actually had. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Ryan made small talk with people he didn't remember. He smiled for photos with his grandmother. He watched Michaela charm everyone with her politeness and her chocolate-smeared face, but his eyes kept finding Emily across the room. She talked to people with genuine warmth. She laughed at their jokes. She hugged an elderly man who must have been 90 if he was a day. She moved through the crowd like she belonged there, like she was woven into the fabric of this town in a way Ryan had never been. And every time she caught him looking, she turned away. Near the end of the night, the town's mayor, a portly man named Henderson, who'd been mayor since before Ryan was born, announced it was time for dancing. Someone turned on music, country songs Ryan didn't recognize, and people paired off. Ryan was about to collect Michaela and finally leave when his grandmother grabbed his arm. "Ask her to dance," Margaret said. "What?" "Emily, ask her to dance." "Grandma, I don't think—" "I didn't ask what you think. I'm telling you what to do." Margaret squeezed his arm. "You've been staring at that girl all night like a puppy who lost his favorite toy. Either ask her to dance or stop looking at her like that. You're making people uncomfortable." "She doesn't want to talk to me." "Did she say that?" "Not in so many words." "Then you don't know." Margaret pushed him gently toward the dance floor. "Go on. Worst she can say is no." Ryan made his way across the room, weaving through dancing couples, his heart hammering against his ribs. This was ridiculous. He was a grown man, a billionaire, a single father. He'd faced down venture capitalists and corporate sharks and journalists who wanted to tear him apart. But asking Emily Harper to dance felt like the hardest thing he'd ever done. She was standing near the wall, arms crossed, watching the dancers with an expression that might have been longing or might have been sadness. Ryan couldn't tell. "Dance with me," he said. It came out more like a command than a request. Wrong, all wrong. Emily turned to look at him, one eyebrow raised. Was that a question or an order? It was. Ryan took a breath. "Would you like to dance with me, please?" For a moment he thought she'd say no, thought she'd walk away and that would be the end of it. Then she uncrossed her arms and said, "One dance." Ryan led her onto the makeshift dance floor, acutely aware of people watching them. He put one hand on her waist. She was thinner than he remembered. He could feel her ribs through the fabric, and took her other hand in his. They started to move, swaying to a slow song about lost love and second chances. How fitting. "You don't have to do this," Emily said quietly. "Do what?" "Whatever this is. Nostalgia. Guilt. Trying to reconnect with your past." She looked up at him, and her eyes were sad. "I don't need your pity, Ryan." "This isn't pity." "Then what is it?" Ryan didn't have an answer, or maybe he did, but he wasn't ready to say it out loud. They danced in silence for a while, and gradually Ryan felt Emily relax slightly in his arms. Not much, but enough. "You're a good dancer," she said eventually. "I had to learn. For business events." "Of course. Business events." There was that bitter edge again. "Must be hard being forced to attend parties in ballrooms instead of town halls." "That's not fair." "Life's not fair, Ryan. You of all people should know that." "Why are you angry at me?" Emily stumbled slightly, and Ryan caught her, pulling her closer. For a moment they were chest to chest, breathing the same air. "I'm not angry," Emily whispered. "I'm tired." "Of what?" "Of everything. Of working 2 jobs to keep the library open. Of watching people I love leave this town and never come back. Of—" She stopped herself. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." "Why?" Emily pulled back slightly, searching his face. "Why do you care? You left. You built a whole life without me, without this place. You don't get to come back and pretend you care now." "I never stopped caring." "Then why didn't you call? Why didn't you write? Why didn't you—" Emily's voice cracked. "Why did you forget I existed?" "I didn't forget." "Bullshit." The word, sharp and unexpected from soft-spoken Emily, made Ryan flinch. "I thought about you," Ryan said. "Every day. Every time something good happened, I wanted to tell you. Every time something went wrong, I wanted to hear your voice telling me it would be okay. I thought about you so much it hurt, Emily. And I didn't call because I knew if I did, I'd want to come back, and I couldn't come back. Not then. Not when I was still trying to prove I could be something." Emily's eyes were wet. "And now you've proved it. So what? You want a gold star? You want me to tell you I'm proud of you?" "I want—" Ryan stopped. What did he want? "I want to know if you're okay." "I'm fine." "You're lying." "You don't know me anymore, Ryan. You don't get to decide when I'm lying." The song ended. Another one started, upbeat and cheerful, completely at odds with the tension between them. Emily stepped back, breaking contact. "Thank you for the dance." She started to walk away, and Ryan knew, he knew, that if he let her go now, that would be it. She'd leave the party, and he'd go back to San Francisco, and another 12 years would pass, and he'd spend the rest of his life wondering what if. "Have coffee with me," he said. Emily stopped, but didn't turn around. "What?" "Tomorrow. Have coffee with me. Or lunch, or just meet me somewhere. Anywhere. Give me 1 hour to talk to you." "Why?" "Because I need to know if you hate me." Emily turned slowly, and her expression was complicated. "I don't hate you, Ryan." "Then what do you feel?" She was quiet for a long moment. Around them, people danced and laughed, oblivious to the small tragedy playing out between 2 people who used to know each other and now didn't. "I'll meet you at the library," Emily said finally. "Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. 1 hour. That's all." "That's all I'm asking." Emily nodded once, then walked away, and this time Ryan let her go. He stood on the dance floor watching her leave, and felt something shift inside him, something fundamental, like a door he'd locked years ago had just creaked open, and he wasn't sure he could close it again even if he wanted to. "Did you have fun, Daddy?" Michaela appeared at his elbow, sleepy and ready to go home. "Yeah, sweetheart," Ryan said, taking her hand. "I think I did." They left the party shortly after, climbing back into the SUV that felt too big and too expensive for Pine Hollow's narrow streets. Michaela fell asleep immediately, her head lolling against the window. Ryan stared out at the dark town rolling past and thought about the way Emily had felt in his arms. Too thin, too tired, too worn down by a life that had clearly been harder than it should have been. And he thought about what his grandmother had said. "When's the last time you did something because you wanted to, not because you had to?" Ryan pulled out his phone and sent a message to his assistant in San Francisco. "Clear my schedule for the next 2 weeks. I'm staying in Georgia." Then he leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. And for the first time in 12 years, he let himself imagine a future that didn't include board meetings and quarterly reports and the hollow echo of success without meaning. He imagined a future that included Emily Harper, whether she wanted to be included or not. The SUV pulled up to his grandmother's house. The same small house where he'd grown up, where he'd slept on a pull-out couch because there wasn't a second bedroom where he'd dreamed of escaping. Now it felt like the only place in the world he wanted to be. Ryan carried Michaela inside, tucked her into the guest bed his grandmother had prepared, and stood in the doorway watching his daughter sleep. She looked peaceful, happy. When was the last time he'd felt peaceful? When was the last time he'd felt anything other than the constant pressure to succeed, to prove himself, to be worthy of the wealth and power he'd accumulated? His phone buzzed, a message from his assistant. "Done. Everything's rescheduled. Is everything okay?" Ryan typed back, "Everything's fine. Just taking care of something I should have taken care of a long time ago." He set down his phone and walked out onto the porch, into the humid Georgia night. Cicadas sang in the darkness. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. The air smelled like honeysuckle and cut grass. Ryan sat on the porch steps and allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Tomorrow, he'd meet Emily at the library. Tomorrow, he'd start trying to understand what had happened to her in the 12 years he'd been gone. Tomorrow, he'd figure out if there was any chance at all, that the girl he'd loved as a teenager could ever forgive the man he'd become. But tonight, he just sat in the darkness and let himself remember. He remembered being 17 and walking Emily home from school because she lived on the bad side of town and he didn't want her walking alone. He remembered the way she'd laugh at his stupid jokes. He remembered sitting on her porch while her mother worked the night shift, talking about nothing and everything, making plans for futures that would never happen. He remembered the day he told her he'd gotten a full scholarship to Berkeley, the way her face had lit up with genuine joy for him, even though they both knew what it meant. He remembered kissing her goodbye the night before he left for California, both of them crying, both of them promising to stay in touch. He remembered breaking that promise within 6 months. Ryan put his head in his hands and let himself feel the full weight of that betrayal. He told himself it was necessary, that cutting ties was the only way to move forward, that he couldn't build a new life while clinging to the old one. But sitting here now, in the place where it had all started, he wondered if he'd been lying to himself all along. Maybe he hadn't cut ties to move forward. Maybe he'd cut ties because he was a coward. The front door creaked open behind him. His grandmother came out wrapped in a robe and sat down beside him on the steps. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Too much on my mind." "Emily?" Ryan nodded. Margaret was quiet for a moment, then said, "That girl had a hard time after you left." "I know." "No, you don't." Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. "Her mama got sick about 6 months after you went to California. Cancer. Went fast. Emily dropped out of community college to take care of her. Worked 3 jobs to pay for medicine that didn't work. Held her mama's hand when she died." Ryan felt sick. "I didn't know." "How could you? You stopped calling, stopped writing. You disappeared, Ryan. You didn't just leave Pine Hollow. You erased it." "I had to." "I know why you did it," Margaret interrupted. "I understand it, even. You were so angry back then, at your parents for dying, at this town for being poor, at yourself for being poor. You needed to get away from all that anger. I get it." "Then why?" "Because Emily didn't get to leave. Emily didn't have a choice. And the girl you left behind is not the woman you saw tonight. Life changed her, Ryan, hardened her, broke her in some ways. I can fix. You can't fix her, Margaret said sharply. She doesn't need fixing. What she needs is for you to decide what you really want. Because if you're just here for a week to ease your guilt, you should leave that girl alone. But if you're here because you actually want to be here, then you better be prepared to prove it. Ryan looked at his grandmother. What if I don't know what I want? Then figure it out fast, because Emily Harper deserves better than being somebody's midlife crisis. Margaret stood up, kissed the top of Ryan's head like he was still a child, and went back inside. Ryan sat alone on the porch until the sky began to lighten, until the first birds started singing, until the world slowly woke up around him. And somewhere in those quiet hours, he made a decision. He didn't know if it was the right decision. He didn't know if Emily would ever forgive him. He didn't know if he could build something real with someone he'd hurt so badly. But he knew he had to try, because for the first time in 12 years, Ryan Cole felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, even if it was the last place he'd ever expected to end up. The sun rose over Pine Hollow, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and Ryan watched it happen with a strange sense of calm. Tomorrow, today, now, he would see Emily, and he would start trying to earn back what he'd thrown away all those years ago. Not her love. He didn't deserve that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But maybe, just maybe, her friendship. That would be enough. It would have to be. Ryan didn't sleep. He sat on that porch until the Georgia sun climbed high enough to make the humidity unbearable, then went inside and made coffee in his grandmother's kitchen using a pot that was older than he was. Michaela woke up around 8, complaining that the bed was lumpy and asking why there was no swimming pool. Because this is a real house, Ryan said, pouring cereal into a chipped bowl. Not everyone has a swimming pool, but we do. We're lucky. Michaela scrunched up her nose, unconvinced by the concept of luck that didn't include chlorinated water and a diving board. Margaret shuffled into the kitchen in her slippers, took one look at Ryan's face and said, "You look like hell." "Good morning to you too, Grandma." "Don't good morning me. You been up all night?" "Most of it." "Thinking about that girl?" Ryan didn't answer, which was answer enough. Margaret poured herself coffee and sat down at the small kitchen table. "What time you meeting her?" 10. "It's 8:30. You planning to show up looking like a zombie? Or you going to take a shower and make yourself presentable?" "I'll shower." "Good, and shave. You got stubble that makes you look like a vagrant." Michaela giggled around a mouthful of cereal. "What's a vagrant?" "Someone who doesn't take care of themselves," Margaret said, eyeing Ryan pointedly. By 9:30, Ryan had showered, shaved, and changed into jeans and a simple button-down shirt. He'd started to put on his Rolex, then taken it off and left it on the dresser. He didn't need to walk into the library looking like he was trying to prove something. "I'll watch Michaela," Margaret said when Ryan came downstairs. "You take your time. It's just an hour." "Sure it is." Margaret smiled knowingly. "Just an hour." The Pine Hollow Public Library sat on the corner of Main and Cypress, a small brick building that had been there since the 1960s. Ryan remembered spending afternoons there as a kid, mostly because it was air-conditioned and his grandmother's house wasn't. He'd read everything they had on computers and programming, teaching himself to code from outdated books, while other kids played basketball in the park. That's where he'd first really talked to Emily. She'd been shelving books, volunteering even back then, and she'd noticed him checking out the same programming book for the third time. "You must really like that book," she'd said. "We can't afford to buy books," Ryan had replied, defensive and embarrassed. Emily had just smiled. "That's what libraries are for." Now, 12 years later, Ryan stood outside that same building and felt like a kid again, nervous, unsure, terrified of screwing this up. He pushed open the door. The library hadn't changed much. Same worn carpet, same musty smell of old paper and air conditioning that barely worked, same wooden circulation desk near the entrance. And behind that desk, stamping books with methodical precision, was Emily. She looked up when the door chimed. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Emily set down the stamp and said, "You're early. I wanted to make sure you didn't change your mind. I don't change my mind once I've decided something. I remember." Emily came out from behind the desk. She wore jeans and a faded t-shirt with the library logo on it, her hair in the same ponytail as last night. No makeup, no pretense. Just Emily, exactly as he remembered and completely different. "We can talk in the back," she said. "There's a reading room. It's quiet." Ryan followed her through the narrow aisles of books, past the children's section with its bright posters and tiny chairs, to a small room at the back of the building. Two worn armchairs sat facing each other near a window that looked out on an overgrown garden. Emily sat in one chair. Ryan took the other. Silence settled between them like dust. "So," Emily said finally, "you wanted to talk?" "Yeah." "About what?" Ryan had rehearsed this. He'd spent hours on the porch thinking about what he'd say, how he'd explain, how he'd make her understand. But now, sitting across from her, all those carefully planned words evaporated. "I'm sorry," he said, "for everything, for leaving, for not calling, for—" "You already apologized last night," Emily interrupted, "and I already told you that you don't need to. You did what you had to do." "That doesn't make it right." "Maybe not, but it's done." Emily folded her hands in her lap. "You wanted to know if I'm okay. Fine, I'm okay. You can go back to San Francisco with a clear conscience." "I don't believe you." "That's your problem, not mine." Ryan leaned forward. "My grandmother told me about your mother." Emily's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "Of course she did." "Why didn't you tell me when it happened? Why didn't you—" "Call you?" Emily laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And say what?" "Hi, Ryan. I know you're busy building your empire, but my mom's dying and I'm falling apart. Can you spare 5 minutes to make me feel better?" That would have been selfish. It wouldn't have been— "Yes, it would have." Emily's voice was sharp. "You got out, Ryan. You escaped this place. You were doing exactly what you were supposed to do. I wasn't going to drag you back down into the mess you'd worked so hard to leave behind. You weren't a mess. You were— I was poor and desperate and watching my mother die slowly while I worked 3 jobs that barely paid enough to keep the electricity on." Emily's composure cracked slightly. "I was everything you left Pine Hollow to get away from." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Emily stood up and walked to the window, her back to Ryan. "You left because you wanted more than this town could give you. You wanted success and money and a life that mattered. And you got it. You got everything you wanted." "Not everything." Emily turned to look at him. "What didn't you get?" Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know how to answer that without sounding like an idiot or a liar, or both. Emily saved him from having to respond. She sat back down, and when she spoke again, her voice was quieter, sadder. "My mom died 3 years after you left," she said. "Pancreatic cancer. By the time they caught it, it was stage 4. She had 6 months. We made it 8, but those last 2 months..." Emily's hands tightened in her lap. "I wouldn't wish that on anyone." "Emily, I dropped out of community college because someone had to be there during the day. Someone had to drive her to appointments, manage her medications, help her to the bathroom when she couldn't walk anymore." Emily's voice remained steady, but her eyes were wet. "I worked the night shift at the gas station on Route 19, and I waitressed at the diner on weekends. Ms. Patterson at the library let me volunteer during the days I wasn't with Mom because she knew I needed something to do, something that felt normal." Bamshiyipendal. Ryan felt like someone had reached into his chest and was squeezing his heart. "After she died, I had about $4,000 in debt for medical bills," Emily continued. "The house was paid off. It was a piece of crap, but it was paid off. So I lived there and worked and paid off the debt a little bit at a time. Took me 2 years. And then? And then I just kept going. Because that's what you do." Emily wiped her eyes roughly, angry at herself for crying. "Miss Patterson retired, and I took over as head librarian. It doesn't pay much, but it's enough. I still waitress on weekends to save up a little. And I live in the same house my mom died in because moving somewhere else would cost money I don't have." "Jesus, Emily. Don't." Emily held up a hand. "Don't you dare pity me. It's not pity. Then what is it? Guilt? You think if you'd been here, things would have been different?" Emily laughed bitterly. "They wouldn't have. Cancer doesn't care if you have a rich boyfriend or not. And even if you'd called, even if you'd sent money, it wouldn't have changed anything. My mom would have still died. I would have still been alone. The only difference is I would have felt even more pathetic for needing your help." Ryan didn't know what to say to that. Everything he could think of sounded hollow.
Why did you stay? He asked finally. After your mom died, why didn't you leave? Go to college somewhere else, start over. Emily looked at him like he'd asked why she didn't sprout wings and fly.
With what money, Ryan? I had debt. I had no degree. I had no family anywhere else. And besides, she gestured around the small library. This town took care of me when I had nothing. People brought casseroles when Mom was sick. They covered shifts when I needed time off. They showed up to the funeral even though half of them barely knew her. You don't abandon people who show up for you. So you've been here ever since, working, surviving. Living, Emily corrected. I've been living. It might not look like much to someone who owns a house in Pacific Heights, but it's my life. And I don't hate it. But you're not happy. Emily was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, a bird landed on the overgrown fence and began to sing. Happiness is complicated, she said finally. I have good days. I have bad days. I have moments where I love my job and moments where I want to scream at entitled tourists who come in here demanding books we don't have. I have friends. I have enough money to eat and keep the lights on. Is that happiness? I don't know. But it's enough. It shouldn't be. Why not? Because you deserve more than enough. Emily's expression hardened. Don't do that. Do what? Act like you know what I deserve. You don't know me anymore, Ryan. You knew the girl I was 12 years ago. That girl doesn't exist anymore. I can see that. Can you? Emily leaned forward, and there was anger in her eyes now. Real anger. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you came back here on some kind of nostalgia trip, saw me, and decided you needed to fix the poor broken girl you left behind. Like I'm some kind of project you can throw money at and feel better about yourself. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Ryan ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. I don't know. I saw you last night and I felt something I haven't felt in years, something real. That's called guilt, Ryan. It's not guilt. Then what? I don't know. Ryan's voice rose and he forced himself to take a breath. I don't know what it is. I just know that I spent 12 years building a company and making money and dating women who looked good on paper, and none of it meant anything. None of it felt real. And then I saw you. And for the first time since I left this town, something actually felt real again. Emily stared at him. So I'm what? Your chance to feel authentic? Your connection to a simpler time? No, because I'm not your emotional support poor person, Ryan. I'm not here to make you feel better about the choices you made. That's not fair. Life's not fair. We've established that. Emily stood up. Your hour's almost up. Ryan stood too, panic rising in his chest. Wait, what do you want from me? Emily's voice cracked. Seriously, what do you want? Forgiveness? You have it. You don't need my permission to move on with your life. Friendship? We don't have anything in common anymore. A relationship? That's insane. We're different people living different lives. So what is it you're actually asking for? I'm asking for a chance. A chance at what? To know you again. To be, I don't know, friends. Something. Anything. Emily shook her head. You're going to leave in a week and go back to your real life. And I'm going to stay here and keep working and keep surviving. Pretending anything else is possible is just, it's cruel, Ryan, to both of us. What if I didn't leave? The words hung in the air between them. Emily blinked. What? What if I stayed? Extended my trip, worked remotely, spent time here. Why would you do that? Because I want to. That's not a good enough reason. Why not? Because Emily's hands were shaking. Because you don't get to just waltz back into my life and decide you want to be here. You don't get to make me... She stopped, breathing hard. Make you what? Care. The word came out barely above a whisper. You don't get to make me care about you again. Ryan took a step toward her. Do you? Care about me? Don't ask me that. Emily, I spent 3 years getting over you, Ryan. Emily's eyes were bright with tears. 3 years convincing myself that you were better off without me dragging you down. 3 years building a life that didn't include you. And now you show up and you look at me like I'm something precious, and you ask me to have coffee, and you talk about staying, and She wiped her eyes angrily. I can't do this again. I can't let you in just to watch you leave. I won't leave. You say that now. I mean it. You don't know what you mean. You're having some kind of midlife crisis. I'm 32. And you think coming back to your hometown and reconnecting with your high school crush is going to fix whatever's broken in your life. Emily's voice was steady now, cold. But I'm not broken, Ryan. I don't need fixing. And I'm not going to be the Band-Aid you put over whatever wound you're trying to heal. She moved toward the door, and Ryan caught her arm gently. Please, he said, just give me a chance to prove I mean what I'm saying. Emily looked down at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. Why should I? Because 12 years ago, I loved you, and I was too stupid and too scared to tell you, and I've spent every day since then wondering what would have happened if I had. Emily's breath caught. Don't. I thought about you every day, Emily. Every single day. And I know that doesn't mean anything. I know I still left. I know I still cut you out of my life. But I need you to know that it wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I cared too much, and I didn't know how to... Stop. Emily pulled her arm free. Just stop. Emily, you loved me. Her voice was shaking with anger. You loved me, and you left anyway? You loved me, and you didn't call for 12 years? That's not love, Ryan. That's cowardice. The word hit him like a slap. You're right, Ryan said quietly. It was cowardice. I was scared that if I stayed in touch, I'd want to come back. And I couldn't come back. Not when I was still angry and poor and barely holding my life together. I convinced myself that the kindest thing I could do was let you go, let you find someone who could actually be there for you. And did I? Emily asked. Find someone. Ryan didn't want to know the answer, but he asked anyway. Did you? Emily laughed, but it sounded broken. No, because apparently I'm an idiot who spent 12 years comparing every man I met to a ghost, to a memory of someone who probably never even existed the way I remembered him. I existed. Did you? Because the Ryan I knew wouldn't have abandoned someone he claimed to love. The Ryan I knew wouldn't have let me go through the hardest years of my life alone. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't ask. Emily's composure finally shattered. You didn't call. You didn't write. You didn't check in. You just disappeared and left me to figure out if you were even still alive. Do you know how many times I almost called you? How many times I looked up your company online just to see if you were okay? Ryan felt sick. Emily, I watched you succeed. I read articles about your company. I saw pictures of you at fancy events with beautiful women on your arm. And I was happy for you. I was. But I also... Her voice broke. I also wondered if you ever thought about me at all. If I ever crossed your mind. If you remembered that I existed. Every day, Ryan said. I thought about you every day. Then why didn't you call? Because I didn't think I deserved to. The honesty of it stopped Emily short. She stared at him, tears streaming down her face. What? I didn't think I deserved to call you, Ryan repeated. I'd left. I'd broken my promise to stay in touch. And the longer I went without calling, the worse it got. How do you call someone after 6 months of silence? After a year? After 5 years? What do you even say? Sorry I disappeared, but I was busy becoming rich. You could have said anything. You could have said hello. I know, and I didn't, and I've regretted it every single day since. Emily sank back into the chair, her hands covering her face. Ryan knelt in front of her, not touching her, just close enough to speak quietly. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he said. I'm not asking you to forget what I did. I'm just asking for a chance to be in your life again. However that looks. Whatever you're comfortable with. Emily lowered her hands. Her eyes were red and swollen. Why now? Why come back now? Because my grandmother invited me, and I couldn't say no to her, and because... Ryan took a breath. Because I'm tired, Emily. I'm tired of pretending that success is enough. I'm tired of raising my daughter in a city where we don't know our neighbors. I'm tired of feeling like I'm running a race with no finish line. And when I saw you last night, it was the first time in 12 years that I felt like maybe I could stop running. I can't be your finish line, Ryan. I'm not asking you to be. I'm asking you to let me try to be a friend. Let me try to be someone you can rely on instead of someone who let you down. Emily was quiet for a long time. Outside, the bird had stopped singing. The library was silent except for the hum of the ancient air conditioning and the distant sound of someone shelving books in another room. I don't trust you, Emily said finally.
I know. I don't trust that you'll stay. I don't trust that this isn't just some phase you're going through. I don't trust that you won't get bored of small town life and go running back to California. I understand. But, Emily wiped her eyes. But I also don't have it in me to tell you to leave. I tried, just now, and I couldn't do it. Hope flickered in Ryan's chest. So what does that mean? It means you can stay, for now. It means we can, I don't know, talk sometimes. Have coffee? Whatever. Emily looked at him directly. But I'm not making any promises. I'm not opening my heart up just for you to break it again. We're two people who used to know each other, and we're trying to figure out if we still can. That's all. That's enough. Is it? For now, yeah, it is. Emily nodded slowly, then stood up. I have to get back to work. Mrs. Chen brings her grandkids in for story time at 11. Ryan stood too. Can I see you again? Tomorrow, maybe? I work until 6 tomorrow. Dinner then? Nothing fancy, just dinner. Emily hesitated, then nodded. Okay, but somewhere in town, nowhere expensive. The diner? The diner's fine. Diners... They walked back through the library together, not talking, both of them processing what had just happened. At the front desk, Emily paused. Ryan? Yeah? If you hurt me again, I won't give you another chance. You understand that? I understand. Good. Ryan left the library and stood on the sidewalk, blinking in the bright Georgia sunlight. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. He felt like he'd just run a marathon, but he also felt something else. Relief. Emily hadn't told him to leave. She'd given him a chance. A small one, hedged with warnings and conditions, but a chance nonetheless. Ryan pulled out his phone and called his assistant. I need you to do something for me, he said when she answered. I need you to research the Pine Hollow Public Library, find out their budget, their funding sources, what they need, everything. The library? Why? Just do it, and send me the information by tomorrow. He hung up and started walking back toward his grandmother's house, his mind already spinning with possibilities. He couldn't fix Emily's past. He couldn't undo the pain of the last 12 years, but maybe he could do something about her present. And maybe, if he was lucky, he could find a way to be part of her future. When he got back to the house, Margaret was on the porch with Michaela, teaching her how to play gin rummy with a deck of cards so old they were practically transparent. How'd it go? Margaret asked without looking up from her cards. She didn't tell me to leave town. That's progress. She doesn't trust me. Can you blame her? No. Margaret finally looked up, studying Ryan's face. You gonna actually stay this time? Or you just playing at it? I'm staying. For how long? Ryan sat down on the porch steps and watched his daughter argue that gin rummy was a stupid game and they should play Go Fish instead. I don't know, he admitted, as long as it takes. As long as what takes? As long as it takes to prove I'm not the person who left. Margaret nodded slowly. That might take a while. I know. You prepared for that? Prepared to actually put in the work? I think so. Thinking isn't the same as doing, boy. I know that too. Margaret reached over and squeezed his shoulder. Then I guess we'll see what you're made of. That night, Ryan lay in the same bed he'd slept in as a teenager and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in the house, Michaela was snoring softly. Somewhere in town, Emily was probably lying awake too, wondering if she'd made a mistake by not sending him away. Ryan didn't have answers. He didn't have a plan. He had no idea if this would work, if Emily would ever trust him again, if he could actually build a life in Pine Hollow after spending 12 years building a different life somewhere else. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, Ryan felt like he was doing something that mattered, not for investors, not for his company, not for his reputation, for himself, and for the woman who'd never stopped being the standard against which he measured everyone else. He picked up his phone and typed out a text to Emily. Thank you for giving me a chance. I won't waste it. He stared at it for 5 minutes before deleting it unsent. Too much. Too soon. Instead, he set an alarm for 6 a.m., pulled the thin blanket up to his chin, and closed his eyes. Tomorrow, he'd start figuring out how to be the person Emily deserved. Tomorrow, he'd start building something real. Ryan woke before his alarm, brain already racing with everything he needed to do.
The sun wasn't up yet, but he could hear his grandmother moving around in the kitchen, the familiar sound of her making coffee in that ancient percolator that probably violated every modern safety standard. He found her at the stove, frying eggs in a cast-iron skillet that was older than both of them combined. "You're up early," she said without turning around. "Couldn't sleep." "Guilt'll do that to you." Ryan poured himself coffee from the pot. It was strong enough to strip paint. "It's not guilt." "Sure it's not." Margaret flipped an egg with practiced precision. "What is it then?" "I don't know. Hope, maybe?" "Hope's dangerous." "So is giving up." Margaret finally turned to look at him, spatula in hand. "You really gonna do this? Stay here and try to win that girl back?" "I'm going to try to be her friend. That's all I'm asking for." "Friend?" Margaret snorted. "You don't look at someone like that when you just want to be friends." "How do I look at her?" "Like she's water and you've been dying of thirst for 12 years. Ryan didn't have an answer for that because his grandmother was right. He spent the morning working from his laptop at the kitchen table while Michaela watched cartoons on the ancient television in the living room. Video calls with his team in San Francisco felt surreal, their faces on his screen talking about market projections and investor meetings, while through the window he could see Mrs. Henderson from down the street walking her dog past the house like she'd done every morning for the past 30 years. "Ryan, you still with us?" His COO's voice cut through his thoughts. "Yeah, sorry. What were you saying about the quarterly numbers?" "I was saying we need you back here by the end of next week. The board meeting. Push it." Silence on the other end of the call. "Push it?" his COO repeated. "I'm staying in Georgia for a while. We can do the board meeting remotely." "Ryan, I don't think that's—" "I'm not asking." Ryan's voice was firm. "I'm telling you, push the meeting. I'll be here for at least another month, maybe longer." More silence. Then carefully, "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I just need some time." After he hung up, he found Margaret standing in the doorway, arms crossed. "A month?" she said. "At least." "Your company gonna survive without you that long?" "If it can't, then I built it wrong." Margaret smiled. "Maybe there's hope for you yet." Ryan picked up Michaela at 4 and drove to the elementary school where Emily had mentioned she sometimes tutored kids after her library shift. He didn't have a plan exactly. He just wanted to see her, to make sure yesterday had actually happened and she hadn't changed her mind about dinner. The school was the same one Ryan had attended, though they'd added a new wing since he'd graduated. He found Emily in a classroom with 3 kids clustered around a table, helping a little boy sound out words from a picture book. She looked up when Ryan appeared in the doorway, surprise crossing her face. "Ryan, what are you doing here?" "We had plans for dinner. I thought I'd see if you wanted a ride." Emily glanced at the clock. "I'm done at 6, remember?" "It's 5:30. "I still have 30 minutes. "I can wait." Emily looked like she wanted to argue, but one of the kids, a girl with braids and missing front teeth, piped up, "Is that your boyfriend, Miss Emily?" Emily's face went red. "No, Harper, that's just... he's an old friend." "He's handsome," Harper announced with the brutal honesty of a 7-year-old. "Harper, and he has a fancy car. Is it a Mercedes?" Michaela, who'd been hiding behind Ryan's leg, stepped forward. "It's a Range Rover, actually." Harper's eyes went wide. "You're rich." "Okay, that's enough," Emily said, flustered. "Everyone back to your books. We still have 20 minutes. Ryan retreated to the hallway with Michaela, biting back a smile. He could hear Emily trying to redirect the kids' attention, but they were more interested in discussing whether Miss Emily's friend was secretly a prince in disguise. When Emily finally emerged at 6, she looked exhausted and embarrassed. "I'm sorry about that," she said. "Kids have no filter." "I noticed." "Harper's going to tell her entire family that I have a boyfriend now." "Would that be so terrible?" Emily shot him a look. "We're not doing this." "Doing what?" "Whatever it is you think we're doing, we're having dinner, that's all." "I know." "Do you?" Michaela saved him from answering by tugging on Emily's sleeve. "Are you Miss Emily?" Emily crouched down to Michaela's level. "I am. And you must be Michaela. How did you know my name?" "Your dad told me about you." "He did?" Michaela looked up at Ryan suspiciously. "What did you say about me?" "That you're smart and brave and you like chocolate cake," Ryan said. "That's true." "I do like chocolate cake." Michaela studied Emily seriously. Are you my dad's girlfriend? No, Emily and Ryan said simultaneously. Then why are you having dinner together? Because we're old friends, Emily said. Sometimes friends have dinner together. Oh. Michaela seemed to accept this. Can I come? Ryan hadn't planned on that, but before he could figure out how to explain why Michaela needed to stay home, Emily said, Of course you can come, if that's okay with your dad. So the three of them ended up at the diner on Main Street, squeezed into a booth with cracked vinyl seats and a table that wobbled unless you wedged a folded napkin under one leg. Michaela ordered a grilled cheese and fries. Emily got a salad. Ryan ordered a burger he wasn't hungry for. This place hasn't changed at all, Ryan said, looking around at the same posters on the walls, the same jukebox in the corner that probably didn't work. Why would it? Emily asked. People like things the way they are. Don't you ever want things to change? Change isn't always good. Michaela was coloring on the kids' menu the waitress had brought, oblivious to the tension building between the adults. I looked into the library's funding, Ryan said quietly. Emily's head snapped up. You what? The public records are online. I just wanted to see. No. Emily's voice was sharp. Whatever you're thinking, the answer is no. You don't even know what I'm going to say. Yes, I do. You're going to offer money. You're going to try to fix things. And I'm telling you right now, we don't need your charity. It's not charity. Then what is it? Ryan glanced at Michaela, who'd stopped coloring and was watching them with wide eyes. Can we talk about this later? He asked. There's nothing to talk about. Emily, I mean it, Ryan. I don't want your money. The library is fine. The library is barely keeping the lights on. So? We manage. But you shouldn't have to just manage. You should... What? Have everything handed to me by a billionaire who feels guilty? Emily's eyes flashed. That's not how the world works for most people. We don't get rescued. We figure it out. The waitress arrived with their food, breaking the tension. Michaela dug into her grilled cheese, apparently deciding that grown-up arguments were boring. They ate in uncomfortable silence for a while. Ryan tried to think of something to say that wouldn't make things worse, but everything that came to mind sounded patronizing or tone-deaf. Finally, Emily spoke. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have snapped at you. No, you were right. I was overstepping. You were trying to help. Same thing, apparently. Emily picked at her salad. It's just, I've spent so long being independent, making my own way. The idea of accepting help, especially from you, it feels like giving up. Like admitting I can't do it on my own. But you don't have to do it on your own, don't I? Emily set down her fork. What happens when you leave, Ryan? What happens when you go back to San Francisco and I'm still here and I've gotten used to having someone to lean on? That's worse than never having help at all. I'm not leaving. You say that now. I mean it. Emily looked at him for a long moment. We'll see. After dinner, Ryan drove Emily home. She lived in a small house on the east side of town, the kind of neighborhood where the houses were close together and the yards were mostly dirt with a few struggling patches of grass. Her house was yellow, or had been yellow once. Now the paint was peeling and the porch sagged slightly to one side. This is me, Emily said, unbuckling her seatbelt. Ryan looked at the house and felt his chest tighten. The roof needed replacing. The gutters were falling off. The front steps had cracks in the concrete. Thanks for dinner, Emily said. Emily, wait. Don't. She turned to face him. Don't look at my house like it's something that needs fixing. It's mine. It's paid for. It keeps the rain out most of the time. That's enough. I wasn't... Yes, you were. I can see it on your face. You're already calculating how much it would cost to renovate it, aren't you? Ryan couldn't deny it because she was right. Emily opened the door. I had a nice time tonight, really. But you need to understand something. I don't need to be saved. I don't need a hero. I just need... She paused. I don't know what I need, actually, but it's not money. Then what is it? I'll let you know when I figure it out. She got out of the car and walked up the cracked sidewalk to her house. Ryan watched her unlock the door and disappear inside, and he felt something crack in his chest. Daddy? Michaela's voice was small from the back seat. Why does Miss Emily live in a sad house? It's not a sad house, sweetheart. It looks sad. Our house in San Francisco is happy. A house isn't happy or sad. It's just a house. But Miss Emily seems sad. Ryan didn't have an answer for that. Over the next 2 weeks, Ryan settled into a routine he'd never imagined having. Mornings were for work, video calls and emails and putting out fires from 3,000 miles away. Afternoons were for Michaela, who'd started to make friends with kids in the neighborhood, despite initially insisting that Georgia was boring and she wanted to go home. Evenings were for Emily when she'd let him see her, which wasn't as often as he wanted, but more often than he'd expected. They fell into an easy pattern. Coffee twice a week at the diner, lunch at the library on Thursdays when she had a break, a walk through town on Sunday afternoons while Michaela played with Margaret. They talked about everything except the past and the future. They talked about books Emily had read and companies Ryan had invested in. They talked about Michaela's struggles to fit in at the local elementary school and Emily's frustration with the town council's latest budget cuts. They talked about nothing important and everything important. And slowly, carefully, they started to remember how to be around each other. But Ryan could feel Emily keeping him at arm's length. She never invited him into her house. She never let conversations get too personal. She never asked about his life in San Francisco beyond surface-level questions about his company. And she never, not once, let him help her. When her car broke down and she had to walk to work, she refused his offer of a ride. When the library's air conditioning died in the middle of a heat wave, she turned down his offer to pay for repairs. When he showed up with groceries one day, claiming he'd accidentally bought too much, she politely but firmly sent him away. It was driving him crazy. "She's testing you," Margaret said one evening when Ryan complained about it. "Testing me how?" "Seeing if you'll stick around even when she won't let you be the hero. Most men can't handle that. They want to fix things, save the day, be needed. Emily's seeing if you'll stay even when she doesn't need you." "That's stupid. That's survival. She's been on her own for a long time, Ryan. She's learned not to rely on people because people leave. You want her to trust you? Then prove you're not going anywhere even when she's not making it easy." So Ryan stopped offering to fix things, stopped trying to solve Emily's problems, started just being present instead. He showed up at the library with coffee and didn't mention the broken copy machine. He sat with her during her lunch break and didn't offer to pay off her student loans. He listened when she talked about struggling to pay for new books and didn't immediately write a check. It was the hardest thing he'd done in years. 3 weeks into his stay, Emily finally invited him inside her house. It happened on a Tuesday evening. Ryan had dropped Michaela off at a birthday party and found himself driving past Emily's street. On impulse, he pulled over and texted her, "Are you home?" The response came 5 minutes later. "Yeah, why? Can I come by?" Another long pause. Then, "Okay." When she opened the door, Ryan could see she'd been cleaning. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore old jeans with paint stains on them. "Sorry, I wasn't expecting company," she said. "You look fine." "I look like I've been scrubbing floors, which is what I was doing." She stepped back to let him in. "Fair warning, the place is a mess." It wasn't a mess. It was small and old and clearly needed repairs, but it was clean and organized. Books everywhere, which didn't surprise Ryan. A worn couch that looked like it had come from a thrift store. Mismatched furniture that somehow worked together. Pictures on the walls. Emily with her mother, Emily with friends, Emily at various ages doing various things. No pictures of Ryan, which shouldn't have hurt, but did. "It's nice," Ryan said. "It's tiny. It's cozy." That's a polite way of saying tiny. Emily went to the kitchen and came back with 2 glasses of water. "I don't have much else to offer. I wasn't planning on entertaining." "Water's fine." They sat on the couch, an entire cushion between them. Ryan looked around, trying not to notice all the things that needed fixing. The water stain on the ceiling, the crack in the window, the outlet cover hanging loose on the wall. "You're doing it again," Emily said. "Doing what?" "Making a mental list of everything that's wrong." "I'm not—" "Ryan, I can see your brain working," she sighed. "Look, I know the house isn't much. I know it needs work. But it's mine, and I love it, and I don't need you to fix it." "I know." "Do you? Because every time you look at something broken, I can see you calculating costs and planning repairs. I can't help it. It's what I do. I see problems, and I want to solve them. I'm not a problem to solve." "I know that." "Then stop treating me like one." Ryan turned to face her fully. "Is that what you think I'm doing?" "Aren't you?"
No, He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. I'm trying to be here, trying to be someone you can count on, and I don't know how to do that without wanting to fix things. Maybe start by just sitting with me. No fixing, no solving, just being. So they sat. In silence at first, which was awkward and uncomfortable. Then Emily turned on the TV, some cooking show she admitted she was addicted to, and they watched people make elaborate desserts they'd never taste. After a while, Emily shifted slightly closer. Not touching, but close enough that Ryan could feel the warmth of her beside him. Can I ask you something? She said during a commercial break. Anything. Why did you really come back? And don't say it was just for your grandmother's birthday. Ryan considered lying, making something up that sounded better, but Emily deserved the truth. Because I'm lonely, he said. I've been lonely for years, and I didn't even realize it until I saw you again. Emily was quiet for a moment. You're a billionaire, Ryan. You can have anyone you want. That's not true. It's literally true. You have money and power, and none of it matters if the person you want doesn't want you back. Emily's breath caught. Ryan, I know you don't want to hear this. I know you think I'm going to leave, but I need you to know that I didn't come back here to fix you or save you or any of that bullshit. I came back because seeing you again reminded me what it felt like to actually feel something real. And what do you feel? Ryan looked at her. Really looked at her. Like I've been sleepwalking for 12 years and I finally woke up. Emily's eyes were wet. That's not fair. What's not fair? Saying things like that, making me... She stopped, swallowing hard. I told myself I wouldn't do this. Wouldn't let you in again. And you make it really hard to keep that promise. Ryan's heart was pounding. So don't. Don't what? Don't keep that promise. Let me in. And then what? You leave in a month and I'm right back where I started, except now I'll know exactly what I'm missing? I'm not leaving in a month. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Emily stood up, pacing to the window. You don't understand. You can't understand. You have options, Ryan. You can live anywhere, do anything. You can pack up tomorrow and go to Paris if you want. But this, she gestured around the small living room. This is my life, this house, this town. I don't get to just leave whenever things get hard. I'm not asking you to leave. Then what are you asking? Ryan stood too, closing the distance between them. I'm asking you to give me a real chance. Not just coffee and polite conversation. A real chance to prove that I'm not the same stupid kid who left 12 years ago. And if I do, if I let myself trust you and you leave anyway, I won't. You don't know that. You can't promise that. You're right. I can't promise I'll never leave. Life happens. Things change. But I can promise that if I do leave, it won't be because I stopped caring. It won't be because you're not enough. It'll be because... He paused, trying to find the right words. It'll be because something legitimately pulls me away. Not fear, not ambition, not because I'm running from something. Emily wiped her eyes. I want to believe you. Then believe me. It's not that simple. Why not? Because I've spent 12 years building walls, Ryan. You can't just show up and expect them to crumble in 3 weeks. I don't expect them to crumble. I expect them to come down slowly, one brick at a time. Ryan reached out, hesitated, then gently took her hand. Let me help you take them down. Emily looked down at their joined hands. Her fingers were trembling. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. You don't get to be scared. You're Ryan Cole. You're not scared of anything. I'm terrified of screwing this up. I'm terrified of hurting you again. I'm terrified that you'll never trust me, and I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been. Emily's fingers tightened around his. What do you want from me? I want you to let me take you to dinner, not the diner, somewhere nice. I want to pick you up at your door and make you laugh and see you smile without sadness behind it. I want to know what makes you happy and what keeps you up at night. I want to be someone you can lean on, even if you never actually lean. That's a lot of wanting. I know. Emily was quiet for a long moment, then, so quietly, Ryan almost missed it. Okay. Okay? Take me to dinner, somewhere nice, this Friday. Hope surged in Ryan's chest. Yeah? But just dinner. Don't
Don't read too much into it. I won't. Ryan. Okay, I'll try not to. Emily almost smiled. That's more honest. Ryan realized he was still holding her hand. He should let go. This was too much, too fast. But Emily wasn't pulling away, and he couldn't bring himself to break the connection. I should go, he said, not moving. Yeah, you should. Neither of them moved. Then Emily did something that shocked both of them. She stepped forward and hugged him. It was brief and awkward and perfect. Her arms around his waist, her head against his chest for just a few seconds before she pulled away, looking embarrassed. Sorry, Don't apologize, Ryan said, his voice rough. Never apologize for that. Emily nodded, stepping back, putting distance between them again. Friday, 7 o'clock. I'll pick you up at 6:30. Okay. Ryan left before he could do something stupid like kiss her, or confess that he'd been falling in love with her all over again since the moment he saw her at his grandmother's party. He drove back to Margaret's house in a daze, his hand still tingling from where she'd held it. When he walked in, Margaret took one look at his face and said, Well? She said yes to dinner. Just dinner? It's a start. Margaret smiled. That it is, boy. That it is. That night, Ryan lay in bed and let himself imagine a future he'd never allowed himself to consider before. A future in Pine Hollow. A future with Emily. A future where success wasn't measured in dollars, but in moments like the one they'd shared on her couch, watching cooking shows and slowly, carefully, learning to trust each other again. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely insane, and Ryan wanted it more than he'd wanted anything in his entire life, including the billion-dollar empire he'd built. Because what good was an empire if you had no one to share it with? What good was success if you went home to an empty house every night? What good was any of it without Emily? Ryan picked up his phone and sent a text to his assistant. I need you to start looking into remote headquarters options, somewhere in Georgia, preferably within an hour of Pine Hollow. The response came immediately. Are you serious? Dead serious. I'm not coming back to San Francisco. Another pause, then, understood. I'll start researching tomorrow. Ryan set down his phone and closed his eyes. He'd built an empire from nothing once. He could do it again from anywhere. And this time he'd build it on a foundation that actually mattered. Friday arrived too slowly and too fast at the same time. Ryan spent the week second-guessing everything. Where should he take her? What should he wear? How did you plan a date with someone you'd known since you were kids but hadn't really known in over a decade? You're overthinking this, Margaret said on Friday afternoon, watching him change shirts for the third time. I'm not overthinking anything. You've been staring at your closet for 20 minutes. I'm being thoughtful. You're being ridiculous. Margaret stood in the doorway, arms crossed. It's Emily. She doesn't care if you wear a $5,000 suit or jeans and a t-shirt. How do you know how much my suits cost? I read the internet, boy. I'm old, not dead. She shook her head. Wear the blue shirt. It makes your eyes look less tired. Ryan pulled out the blue shirt. Thanks. And Ryan? Yeah? Don't try so hard. Just be yourself. What if myself isn't good enough? Margaret's expression softened. Then she's not the right person. But something tells me she is. Ryan drove to Emily's house at exactly 6:30, his heart hammering like he was 16 again. He'd made reservations at a restaurant in Atlanta, an hour drive, but the best he could find that wasn't either a chain or someone's grandmother's kitchen converted into a dining room. Emily opened the door wearing a simple black dress that probably cost $40 and made her look more beautiful than any of the women in $1,000 designer gowns he'd taken to charity galas in San Francisco. Hi, she said, and she looked nervous, which somehow made Ryan feel better. Hi, you look... He stopped, trying to find a word that didn't sound like a cliché. You look really nice. This old thing? Emily smoothed down the dress self-consciously. I've had it for years. I almost didn't wear it because the zipper sticks, but it's perfect. She smiled, and for once it reached her eyes. You clean up pretty well yourself. Thanks. Ryan held up a small bouquet of flowers he'd bought at the grocery store. They were half wilted and probably cost $10, but they were all Pine Hollow had to offer. I brought these. I know they're not... They're perfect, Emily said, taking them.
She buried her face in the petals for a moment, then looked up at him with wet eyes. No one's brought me flowers in years. Then everyone you've dated is an idiot. I haven't dated anyone. The admission hung in the air between them. No one? Ryan asked. A few failed attempts. Nothing that stuck. Emily set the flowers on the table by the door. Let me grab my purse.
The drive to Atlanta was easier than Ryan expected. They talked about Michaela, who'd become obsessed with collecting rocks from Margaret's yard. They talked about the library's upcoming book fair. They talked about everything except the weight of this dinner, this date, this step they were both terrified to take. The restaurant was one of those places with cloth napkins and dim lighting and a wine list longer than the menu. Ryan watched Emily's eyes widen slightly when they walked in.
This is too much, she whispered. It's fine. Ryan, I can see the prices from here. The appetizers cost more than my electric bill. Don't look at the prices. That's easy for you to say. The hostess led them to a table by the window overlooking the city lights. Emily sat down and immediately looked uncomfortable, like she didn't belong there. Like everyone could see she was the girl from Pine Hollow who'd never left, never done anything, never been anywhere. Hey, Ryan said softly, reaching across the table to touch her hand. It's just dinner, just us. Forget about everything else. I don't know which fork to use. Neither do I half the time. Start from the outside and work your way in. If you mess up, who cares? Emily took a breath and nodded. Okay, just dinner. But it wasn't just dinner, and they both knew it.
The waiter came and took their order. Emily chose the cheapest entree on the menu despite Ryan's insistence that she could get whatever she wanted. When the food arrived, Ryan could see her calculating the cost of every bite. Stop it, he said. Stop what? Doing math in your head. Worrying about the bill. I can afford this, Emily. I can afford this restaurant 1,000 times over. Just enjoy it.
That's the problem, though, isn't it? Emily set down her fork. You can afford anything, and I can't afford any of this. We're living in completely different worlds, Ryan. We're sitting at the same table. You know what I mean. Ryan did know. He'd been trying not to think about it, but the gap between their lives was impossible to ignore. He wore a watch that cost more than her car. She counted pennies to make rent. He flew first class. She'd never been on a plane.
Does it have to matter? Ryan asked. Of course it matters. Why? Because, Emily struggled to find the words, because I don't want to be some kind of project for you. Some poor girl you rescue to make yourself feel better about having too much money. Is that really what you think this is? I don't know what this is. That's the problem. Ryan leaned back in his chair, frustrated. This is me trying to take you on a nice date because I care about you, and I want to spend time with you somewhere nicer than the Pine Hollow Diner. That's all. But it's not all, because tomorrow you'll go back to your real life, and I'll go back to mine, and we'll both remember that we don't actually fit together. We fit together fine when we were kids. We were kids, Ryan. We didn't know anything. We didn't know about money or class or... She stopped. I'm sorry. I'm ruining this. You're not ruining anything. You're being honest. Honestly anxious. I'm anxious too. Emily looked surprised. You are. Terrified, actually. Of what? Of screwing this up, of saying the wrong thing, of making you think I'm just some rich asshole who's slumming it in his hometown for a few weeks before he gets bored and leaves. Are you? The question was so direct, so raw, that it took Ryan's breath away. No, he said. I'm a guy who's been running for 12 years and finally stopped long enough to realize he was running away from the only thing that ever actually mattered. Emily's eyes filled with tears. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because it makes it really hard to protect myself. Maybe you don't need to protect yourself from me. Maybe I do. Maybe that's the smart thing to do. When has love ever been smart? The word hung between them like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. Ryan, I'm not saying I'm in love with you right now, Ryan said quickly. I'm saying that 12 years ago I was in love with you, and I left anyway. And I've regretted it every single day since. And now I'm back, and I'm trying to figure out if there's any chance at all, that we could what? Fall in love again? Build a life together? Live happily ever after? Emily's voice was shaking. That's a fairy tale, Ryan. That's not real life.
Why can't it be both? Because fairy tales don't have medical bills and broken down cars and houses with leaking roofs. Fairy tales don't have billionaires dating librarians and pretending the difference doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. It should. It matters to me.
They sat in silence while the waiter refilled their water glasses and pretended not to notice the tension at their table. Around them, other couples laughed and talked and lived in their own worlds. Finally, Ryan spoke. "What do you want me to do, Emily? Tell me. Do you want me to leave? Go back to San Francisco and never contact you again? I'll do it if that's what you really want." "That's not what I want." "Then what?" Emily wiped her eyes with her napkin, not caring that her makeup was probably running. "I want you to understand that this is scary for me. I want you to understand that letting you in means risking everything. Because you have options, Ryan. You always have options, but I don't. This town, this life, this is all I have. And if I let myself fall for you and you leave, I don't get to just pack up and start over somewhere else. I have to stay here and see the places we went together and remember what I lost."
I'm not going to leave. You keep saying that, but you don't know that. Life happens. Your company needs you. Your daughter needs stability. You get bored of small-town Georgia. There are a million reasons you could leave and only one reason to stay. You, Ryan said, you're the reason to stay. That's too much pressure. It's not pressure, it's truth. Emily shook her head. I don't know if I can do this. Ryan felt his heart crack. Can't do what? This dinner? Or us? I don't know, She stood up abruptly. I need some air. She walked toward the restrooms before Ryan could stop her. He sat alone at the table, feeling like he'd just failed some test he hadn't known he was taking. The waiter approached nervously. Is everything all right, sir? Fine. Can you box up our food? Of course.
Ryan paid the bill, $300 for a meal they'd barely touched, and waited. Emily came back 15 minutes later, her eyes red, but her composure restored. I'm sorry, she said. I panicked. It's okay. It's not okay. You went to all this trouble and Emily, it's fine. Really. Ryan stood up. Let's get out of here. They drove back toward Pine Hollow in silence. Ryan's mind raced, trying to figure out what to say, how to fix this, how to make her understand that he was serious. Halfway home, Emily spoke. Can you pull over? What? Just pull over, please. Ryan pulled into a rest stop off the highway. They were the only car there, the parking lot lit by a single flickering streetlight. Emily got out of the car and walked to a picnic table. Ryan followed, unsure what was happening. She sat on top of the table, feet on the bench, and looked up at the stars. I used to come here sometimes, she said, after Mom died, when the house felt too empty and too full of memories at the same time. I'd drive out here and sit and pretend I could just disappear into the sky. Ryan sat beside her, careful not to touch her. Did it help? Not really, but it felt like doing something instead of just drowning. They sat in silence for a while. A truck passed on the highway, its lights cutting through the darkness. I'm not good at this, Emily said finally. At what? Letting people in. Trusting, being vulnerable. She pulled her knees up to her chest. I learned to take care of myself because I had to. And now you're here, and you're offering to take care of me. And I don't know how to accept that without feeling like I'm giving up some essential part of myself. I don't want to take care of you, Ryan said. I want to be there with you. That's different. Is it? Yeah. Taking care of you would mean doing things for you. Being there with you means doing things together, as equals. Emily looked at him. But we're not equals. You have money and power and you have strength and resilience and a community that loves you. You have roots and purpose, and you know who you are. I have money, Emily, that's all. And money is the least interesting thing about a person. Easy to say when you have it. You're right, it is easy to say, but it's also true. Ryan turned to face her fully. Do you know what I realized this week? I've been trying to impress you, taking you to expensive restaurants, offering to fix things, trying to be this successful guy who has his life together. But that's not what you need. That's not what you want. What do I want? I think you want someone who sees you, really sees you. Not as someone who needs saving, but as someone who's already saved herself. Someone who's built a life from nothing
and made it matter. Emily's breath caught. Ryan, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm probably going to keep screwing up. I'm probably going to keep offering to fix things when I should just shut up and listen. But I'm trying, Emily. I'm trying to be what you need instead of what I think you should want. Emily was quiet for a long time. Then she reached over and took his hand. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. What if we try this and it doesn't work? Then at least we tried. At least we didn't spend the rest of our lives wondering. And what if it does work? What then? Then we figure it out as we go. Emily laughed shakily. That's not much of a plan. It's the only plan I've got. She squeezed his hand. Okay. Okay, let's try, but slowly. No grand gestures, no expensive dinners, just us, figuring it out. Relief flooded through Ryan. I can do slow. Can you? Because you're kind of an all-or-nothing person. I'll learn. Emily smiled, and this time it was real. We'll see. They sat on that picnic table for another hour, talking about nothing and everything. Emily told him about the kids she tutored, the ones who struggled and the ones who thrived and the ones who broke her heart because she knew they'd never get out of Pine Hollow. Ryan told her about Michaela, about how scared he was that he was screwing up as a parent, how sometimes he looked at his daughter and saw his late wife and didn't know how to handle the grief that still hit him at unexpected moments. You never talk about her, Emily said. Your wife. It's complicated. Most things are. Ryan took a breath. We weren't in love. Not really. We got married because it made sense. She came from money. I was building the company. It was a good partnership. And then she got pregnant, and we thought maybe a baby would make it real. Make us real. Did it? No. But it made us parents, and we were trying to figure out how to be partners and parents at the same time when she got sick. Ovarian cancer, stage 4 by the time they caught it. She had 6 months. We made it 9. I'm sorry. Me too. Not because I loved her the way I should have, but because Michaela lost her mother. Because my wife deserved to be with someone who actually loved her, instead of someone who was just going through the motions. Emily's hand tightened in his. You can't blame yourself for that. Can't I? I married someone I didn't love because it was practical, because it helped my company, because it looked good on paper. How is that not my fault? You were trying to build something. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes me a selfish one. We're all selfish sometimes. Ryan looked at her. Were you, when you stayed in Pine Hollow? Emily considered the question. Maybe. Maybe I stayed because leaving was too scary. Maybe I stayed because I couldn't handle starting over. I told myself it was for the town, for the people who needed me, but maybe it was just because I was afraid. There's nothing wrong with being afraid. Then why do I feel like a coward? Because we're both really good at beating ourselves up for being human. Emily laughed, and the sound cut through the heavy conversation like light through fog. We're quite a pair, aren't we? The saddest people at the rest stop. Probably the only people at the rest stop. That too. They drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence. When Ryan pulled up to Emily's house, she didn't immediately get out. Thank you, she said, for the disastrous dinner, for being honest, for not pretending to be perfect, She paused. For staying even when I'm difficult. You're not difficult, you're careful. There's a difference. Emily leaned over and kissed his cheek. Quick, barely there, but enough to make Ryan's heart stop. Good night, Ryan. Good night. He watched her walk to her door, watched her unlock it, and turn to wave before going inside. Then he sat in his car for 10 minutes, his hand on his cheek where she'd kissed him, feeling like a teenager again. When he got back to Margaret's house, she was still awake, reading in her chair. How was it? She asked. Complicated. Good relationships usually are. Who said anything about a relationship? Margaret looked at him over her reading glasses. Boy, you've been in love with that girl since you were 16. Don't try to pretend this is casual. Ryan sat down on the couch. She's scared. So are you. How do you know? Because you keep looking for reasons it won't work instead of reasons it will. You're protecting yourself, same as she is. I'm not. Yes, you are. You keep talking about staying, but you haven't actually made any permanent changes. You're still paying for your house in San Francisco. You're still running your company from there. You're still treating this like a temporary thing. I told my assistant to look for office space in Georgia. Did you tell Emily that? Ryan was quiet.
That's what I thought, Margaret said.
You're keeping one foot out the door, just in case. But you can't ask Emily to trust you completely while you're still hedging your bets. I'm not hedging. Then sell your house, move your company headquarters, enroll Michaela in school here. Do something that proves this isn't just an extended vacation. That's a lot to ask. Love usually is.
Ryan went to bed that night with his grandmother's words echoing in his head. She was right. He'd been asking Emily to trust him while keeping his own escape route open. He'd been asking her to take a risk while minimizing his own. That wasn't fair. It wasn't enough. The next morning, Ryan called his real estate agent in San Francisco. I want to sell the house, he said. The Pacific Heights house? But you love that house. I did. I don't anymore. Put it on the market.
Ryan, are you sure?
This seems sudden. I'm sure. Next, he called his assistant. How's the office space search going? I found a few options in Atlanta. There's a great building in... Not Atlanta, Pine Hollow. Pine Hollow doesn't have commercial real estate that would work for a company our size. Then we'll build something, or rent something, and make it work. I don't care. I want to be based here. Ryan, the team is not going to want to relocate to rural Georgia. Then we'll hire locally and let the California team work remotely. This is happening. Make it work. After he hung up, Ryan felt lighter. Terrified, but lighter. He was burning his bridges. He was making it impossible to run. And somehow, that felt exactly right. Margaret found him on the porch later that morning. You making changes? Big ones. Good. Now go tell Emily. I will. Soon. Ryan. What? Soon is another word for hedging. Go tell her now. So Ryan drove to the library, his heart pounding, his hands shaking slightly on the wheel. He found Emily shelving books in the children's section. Ryan? She looked surprised. What are you doing here? I sold my house in San Francisco. Emily nearly dropped the book she was holding. You what? I sold it, or I'm selling it. It's going on the market Monday. Ryan, that's crazy. You can't. I'm moving my company headquarters here to Pine Hollow, or as close as I can get. You're not thinking straight. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in 12 years. Ryan took her hands, books and all. You said I keep one foot out the door. You're right. I did. But I'm not anymore. I'm all in, Emily, completely. Whether you want me or not, I'm staying. This is my home now. Emily's eyes were huge. What about Michaela? She likes it here. She's made friends. She loves my grandmother. She asks me every day if we have to go back to California. But your life? My life is wherever I decide it is, and I'm deciding it's here. Emily set down the books with shaking hands. This is too much. It's not about you, not entirely. It's about me realizing that I built a life I don't actually want, and now I'm building a different one. What if we don't work out? Then I'll still be here, because this is where I want to be. Emily started crying, actually crying, tears streaming down her face, and Ryan panicked. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. No. Emily laughed through her tears. No, I'm not. I'm not upset. I'm just... She wiped her eyes. You're really staying. I'm really staying. You're insane. Probably. Emily threw her arms around him, right there in the children's section, surrounded by picture books and tiny chairs. Ryan held her tight, feeling like he'd finally done something right. This is crazy, Emily whispered against his chest. Yeah, I'm still scared. Me too. But maybe... She pulled back to look at him. Maybe we can be scared together. I can work with that. Emily kissed him then. Not on the cheek this time, but really kissed him, soft and tentative and perfect. It lasted maybe 3 seconds before they heard someone clear their throat. They pulled apart to find Mrs. Chen standing there with her grandchildren, all of them staring with wide eyes. Don't mind us, Mrs. Chen said with a huge grin. We'll just get our books and go. Emily's face turned bright red. Mrs. Chen, this isn't... Oh, honey, everyone in town knows about you two. We've been waiting for this since he came back. She ushered her grandchildren toward the picture books. About time he made an honest woman of you. After Mrs. Chen left, Emily buried her face in her hands.
Oh no, she's going to tell everyone. Let her. Ryan, I don't care who knows. Do you? Emily peeked at him through her fingers. I guess not. Then come here. He kissed her again, slower this time, and Emily kissed him back. And neither of them cared that they were in the middle of the library where anyone could see, because after 12 years of running, of pretending, of building walls and keeping distance, they were finally letting themselves fall. And it was terrifying and wonderful and completely worth it. The news that Ryan Cole had sold his San Francisco mansion and was moving his billion-dollar company to Pine Hollow spread through town faster than gossip at a church potluck. By Monday morning, everyone knew. By Tuesday, people were placing bets on how long it would last. 6 months, Tommy Chen said at the diner. That's my bet. 6 months before he realizes he misses the city life. I give it 3, said Mr. Henderson, the mayor. A man like that can't stay in a town this small. He'll get bored. Emily heard all of it. Working at the library meant she heard everything, whether she wanted to or not. People would come in, check out books, and casually mention that they'd seen Ryan looking at commercial properties on Main Street, or that his daughter had enrolled at Pine Hollow Elementary, or that he'd been spotted at the hardware store buying paint. You really think he's staying? Asked Sarah Mitchell, one of Emily's few close friends, over coffee one morning. He says he is. And you believe him? Emily traced the rim of her cup. I'm trying to. That's not the same as believing. I know. Sarah leaned back in her chair. Look, I'm happy for you, really. But Em, you've been alone for so long. Don't lose yourself just because some rich guy decided you're his redemption arc. It's not like that, isn't it? Think about it. He comes back after 12 years, sees you, and suddenly decides to upend his entire life. That's not about you. That's about him trying to fix whatever's broken in himself. The words stung because they echoed Emily's own fears. Maybe, but maybe people are allowed to change. People can change, but they usually don't. Emily thought about that conversation for days. Was she being naive? Was Ryan really staying, or was this just an extended midlife crisis? Would he wake up one morning 6 months from now and realize he'd made a terrible mistake? She didn't have answers. All she had was the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, the way he showed up at the library every day with coffee, not because she needed it, but because he wanted an excuse to see her. The way he listened when she talked about her day. Actually listened, instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. 3 months into whatever they were calling this relationship, Ryan bought a house. Not the biggest house in Pine Hollow, that would have been too much, but an old Victorian on the edge of town that had been abandoned for years. The previous owner had died and the family couldn't afford to maintain it, so it had sat empty, slowly falling apart. Emily saw it for the first time on a Saturday afternoon when Ryan picked her up in his Range Rover with a grin on his face. Where are we going? She asked. You'll see. He drove to the Victorian and parked in the overgrown driveway. Emily stared at the house. Ryan, this place is a disaster. I know, isn't it great? Great, the porch is falling off. I can fix that. The paint is peeling. I can fix that too. There's a hole in the roof. Okay, I'll hire someone to fix that. Ryan got out of the car and came around to open her door. Come on. I want to show you inside. The inside was worse than the outside. Water damage, cracked plaster, floors that creaked ominously with every step. But there was also a beautiful staircase with hand-carved banisters, original hardwood floors under the grime, and huge windows that let in golden afternoon light. I'm going to renovate it, Ryan said, standing in what used to be a living room. Turn it into a real home. For you and Michaela? Yeah. He turned to look at her. And maybe someday for someone else too, if she wants. Emily's heart skipped. Ryan, I'm not asking you to move in. Not now, but someday, if we... He ran his hand through his hair, nervous. I'm building a life here, Emily, a real one, and I'm hoping you'll want to be part of it. Emily walked to one of the windows, looking out at the overgrown yard. She could see the potential, could see what this place could become with time and money and care, could see children playing in that yard, could see herself sitting on that porch with morning coffee, could see a future she'd never allowed herself to imagine. I'm terrified, she whispered. Ryan came to stand beside her. Of what? Of wanting this too much, of getting used to it, of building my life around you, and then, I'm not going anywhere, Emily. You keep saying that. Because it's true. She turned to face him. But what if something changes? What if your company needs you back in California? What if Michaela hates it here and wants to go back? What if you wake up one day and realize small-town life isn't what you thought it would be? Then we'll figure it out together. That's not an answer.
It's the only answer I have. Ryan took her hands. I can't promise that everything will be perfect. I can't promise that we won't face problems. But I can promise that I'm not running anymore. Whatever happens, we face it together. Emily wanted to believe him, wanted to let go of the fear that had been her constant companion for so long. But 12 years of learning not to depend on anyone couldn't be undone in 3 months. I need time, she said. Take all the time you need. What if I need a lot of time? Then I'll wait. Emily searched his face for doubt, for hesitation, for any sign that he was just saying what she wanted to hear. She found nothing but sincerity. Okay, she said finally. Show me the rest of the house. They spent the afternoon exploring the Victorian, Ryan pointing out what he wanted to fix, and Emily occasionally mentioning that his plans were completely insane. By the time they left, the sun was setting, and Emily had started to believe, just a little, that maybe this could actually work. The renovation took 4 months. Ryan threw himself into it with the same intensity he'd once applied to building his company. He hired local contractors, which endeared him to the town more than any amount of money could have. He showed up at the hardware store so often that the owner started joking that Ryan should just move in. Emily watched from the sidelines, still keeping her distance, still protecting herself. They had dinner twice a week, coffee most mornings, long conversations about nothing and everything. But Emily never stayed overnight at Margaret's house where Ryan was living during the renovation, never gave him a key to her place, never fully let down the walls she'd spent years building. It frustrated Ryan, she could see it in his eyes. But he never pushed, never demanded more than she was willing to give. You're being stubborn, Sarah said one night over wine at Emily's kitchen table. I'm being careful. There's a difference between careful and scared. I know which one I am, Sarah sighed. That man sold his house, moved his company, and bought a falling-apart Victorian that he's spending a fortune to fix. What more does he have to do to prove he's serious? I don't know. Stay. He is staying. For now. For now is all any of us have. Emily knew Sarah was right, but knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were two different things. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday in October. Emily's car finally died. Not broke down, but fixable died. Actually, dead you need a new car died. The mechanic delivered the news with the kind of sympathy usually reserved for terminal diagnoses. I'm sorry, Emily. The engine's shot. It would cost more to fix than the car's worth. Emily stood in the parking lot of the mechanic's shop and felt the weight of it hit her. She'd been saving for a new car, but she'd had to use that money to fix the library's furnace last winter. She had maybe $1,000 in her account. Used cars in decent condition started at $5,000. She called Ryan because she needed a ride home, and before she could stop herself, she was crying. Hey, what's wrong? Ryan's voice was instantly concerned. My car died, and I don't have the money to replace it. And I know that sounds stupid because you have plenty of money, but I can't ask you for help because I need to be able to take care of myself and… Emily, breathe. I'm coming to get you. Where are you? She gave him the address and sat on the curb outside the mechanic's shop, feeling like a failure. She'd been so proud of her independence, of managing on her own, and now one dead car had exposed how fragile her whole life was. Ryan showed up 15 minutes later and sat down beside her on the curb without saying anything. I don't want your money, Emily said. I know. I need to figure this out myself. Okay. Stop being understanding. It's annoying. Ryan smiled. What do you want me to be? I don't know. Pushy, insistent. Tell me you're buying me a car whether I like it or not. Would that help? No, it would make me angry. Then I won't do it. They sat in silence for a while. A car drove past, the driver waving at Ryan, who'd become a familiar sight around town. I hate this, Emily said finally. Hate what? Needing help. Feeling like I can't manage on my own. Being the kind of person who breaks down crying over a stupid car. You're not breaking down. You're having a normal reaction to a stressful situation. It's not normal for you. You don't worry about cars. You don't worry about money. You don't worry about anything.
That's not true. What do you worry about?
Ryan was quiet for a moment. I worry that I'm going to screw this up, that I'm going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, and you're going to realize you're better off without me. I worry that Michaela is going to resent me for moving her away from everything she knew. I worry that my company is going to fail because I'm not paying enough attention to it. I worry that I made this grand gesture of moving to Pine Hollow, and it's going to turn out to be the biggest mistake of my life. Emily looked at him, surprised. You worry about all that? Every single day. But you always seem so confident. That's called acting. I'm pretty good at it. Ryan picked up a pebble and tossed it across the parking lot. The difference is, I have money to cushion my mistakes. You don't, and that's not fair, but it doesn't mean I don't worry. Emily leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm tired of being strong all the time. Then don't be. Be weak sometimes. Let me help you.
What if I get used to it? What if you do? Then I'll need you. And needing people is dangerous. Ryan put his arm around her. What if needing people is just being human? What if the dangerous thing is pretending you don't? Emily didn't have an answer for that.
Ryan drove her home and didn't mention the car again. That night, Emily lay in bed and thought about Sarah's words, about how, for now, was all any of us had, about how she'd been so focused on protecting herself from future pain that she'd been missing the present happiness. The next morning, she called Ryan. I need to borrow money, she said before she could lose her nerve. Okay. For a car. I'll pay you back. With interest. I'll draw up a contract if you want. Emily, I'm serious. This is a loan, not a gift. A loan. Okay? It's a loan. And I'm going to pay you back every cent. I believe you. Emily took a breath. Thank you. You're welcome. After she hung up, Emily sat on her couch and cried. Not because she was sad, but because accepting help had felt like jumping off a cliff, and she'd survived the fall. It was a small step, but it was a step. 2 weeks later, Ryan finished the Victorian. Emily came to see it on a Sunday afternoon and barely recognized it as the same house. The porch had been rebuilt. The paint was fresh. The hole in the roof was fixed. Inside, the water damage was gone. The plaster repaired, the floors refinished. It was beautiful. You did all this in 4 months? Emily asked, walking through the rooms. I had help. And money. Money speeds things up. Michaela ran past, chasing a butterfly that had somehow gotten inside. She'd grown over the past months, gotten more confident, more settled. She had friends at school now. She talked about Pine Hollow like it was home. She seems happy, Emily said. She is. She asked me yesterday if we could get a dog. What did you say? I said we'd think about it, which she correctly interpreted as probably yes. Emily smiled. You're a good dad. I'm trying. Ryan led her to the kitchen, which had been completely gutted and rebuilt. Modern appliances, granite countertops, an island big enough to seat 6 people. This is probably overkill for Pine Hollow. Probably. But I wanted it to be nice, to be a place where people would want to spend time. People will want to spend time here because you're here, not because of the countertops. Ryan turned to face her. Will you? Will I what? Want to spend time here. Emily looked around the beautiful kitchen, imagining herself cooking here, eating here, laughing here. It was terrifying how easy it was to picture. Yeah, she said softly. I think I will. That night they had dinner in the new house, takeout from the diner, eaten at the island on paper plates because Ryan didn't have real dishes yet. Michaela fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from running around all day, and Ryan carried her to one of the bedrooms he'd set up. When he came back, Emily was washing their paper plates in the sink, which was ridiculous, but she needed something to do with her hands. You don't have to wash those, Ryan said. They're disposable. I know, Emily turned off the water. I don't know what to do with my hands when I'm nervous. Why are you nervous? Because this feels real now. This house, this life, us. It all feels real, and I don't know how to handle that. Ryan crossed to her and took her hands, still wet from the sink. What if you don't have to handle it? What if you just let it be real? I don't know how to do that. Neither do I. But maybe we figure it out together.
Emily looked at their joined hands. Ryan's were warm and dry. Hers were cold and wet and shaking slightly. "I'm in love with you," she said, and the words came out quiet and scared and honest. Ryan's eyes widened. "What?" "I'm in love with you. I have been for months, maybe longer. Maybe since we were kids and I never really stopped." The words were tumbling out now, unstoppable. "And it terrifies me because I know what it feels like to lose people I love, and I don't know if I can survive losing you too. You're not going to lose me." "You can't promise that." "You're right. I can't." Ryan pulled her closer. "People die. Things happen. Life is uncertain and scary and completely out of our control. But Emily, I'm in love with you too. And I'd rather have whatever time we get together than spend the rest of my life safe and alone and wondering what could have been." Emily started crying, and Ryan pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried out years of fear and loneliness and pain. "I'm sorry," she said against his chest. "I'm sorry for being so difficult, for making this so hard." "You're not difficult, you're careful, and you have every reason to be. But you've been patient and kind, and you've done everything right, and I keep pushing you away." "Hey," Ryan pulled back to look at her. "You're allowed to be scared. You're allowed to protect yourself. I'm not going anywhere just because you're not perfect. I want to be brave." "You are brave. You're the bravest person I know." Emily laughed through her tears. "How am I brave? I'm terrified of everything. Bravery isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing it anyway. And you've been doing that your whole life." Emily kissed him then, salt from her tears mixing with the kiss, and it was messy and imperfect and real. When they pulled apart, Ryan was smiling. "So you love me," he said. "Don't gloat." "I'm not gloating. I'm savoring." "There's a difference?" "Huge difference." Ryan kissed her forehead. "I've waited 12 years to hear you say that. I've waited 12 years to be brave enough to say it." They stood in the kitchen of Ryan's new house, holding each other, while Michaela slept in the next room and the Georgia night settled around them. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was just a moment, just two imperfect people trying to figure out how to build something real, but it felt like enough. 6 months later, on a warm spring evening, Ryan proposed to Emily in the park, where they'd spent countless afternoons as teenagers. He didn't make a big production of it. No hired musicians, no elaborate setup, just the two of them and a simple question and a ring that Emily later learned had belonged to his grandmother. "Yes," Emily said before he even finished asking, and she was crying again, happy tears this time. And Ryan was laughing, and they were both making a scene, and neither of them cared. They got married 3 months later in Margaret's backyard. It was a small wedding, just family and close friends, maybe 50 people total. Emily wore a simple white dress from a boutique in Atlanta. Ryan wore a suit but took off his tie halfway through the reception because it was too hot. Michaela was the flower girl and took her job very seriously, scolding guests who stepped on the petals she'd carefully scattered down the aisle. Margaret cried through the entire ceremony, and when it was over, she pulled Emily aside and said, "You take care of my boy." "I will. And let him take care of you too. That's the hard part." Emily laughed. "I'm learning." "Good, because he needs someone to take care of. Makes him feel useful." At the reception, Tommy Chen gave a toast that started sincere and ended with him roasting Ryan for all the times he'd been an arrogant jerk in high school. Sarah gave a toast that made Emily cry. Margaret gave a toast that threatened to disown Ryan if he ever hurt Emily. It was perfect in its imperfection. Emily and Ryan bought a dog 3 months after the wedding, a rescue mutt that Michaela named Princess, despite the dog being male. They didn't correct her because it made her happy, and the dog didn't seem to care what he was called as long as he got treats. Ryan's company opened a small satellite office in Atlanta, and he hired a team of people who were excited to work remotely and visit the headquarters once a month. The company didn't grow as fast as it would have if Ryan had stayed in San Francisco, but it grew steadily, and Ryan discovered he liked the slower pace. He learned that success didn't have to mean constant expansion. Sometimes it just meant sustainability and satisfaction, and actually enjoying the work. Emily kept her job at the library because she loved it, but Ryan quietly set up a foundation that funded the library's budget, along with several other community programs in Pine Hollow. He didn't tell Emily for 6 months, and when she found out, they had their first real fight as a married couple. "You can't just throw money at everything," Emily yelled.
I'm not throwing money. I'm investing in the community. Without telling me? Because I knew you'd react like this. They didn't speak for 2 hours, which was torture in a house where they lived together. Then Emily came downstairs and found Ryan sitting on the porch, looking miserable. I'm sorry, she said. I'm sorry too. I should have told you. No, Emily sat beside him. I'm still learning to share my life with someone, to let you be part of my decisions, even the money stuff. And I'm still learning that I can't fix everything with a check, even when I really want to. They sat in silence for a while, holding hands, working through it the way married people do. The library really did need the money, Emily said finally. I know. And the after-school program was about to shut down. I know that too. So I guess what I'm saying is thank you, even though you should have told me. I'll tell you next time. Next time? Ryan grinned sheepishly. I might have also funded the new playground at the elementary school. Emily hit him with a pillow and they ended up wrestling on the porch like teenagers, and Princess the dog barked at them like they were insane, and it was messy and ridiculous and real. A year into their marriage, Emily got pregnant. It was unexpected. They'd talked about kids but hadn't actively tried, and Emily was terrified. She'd never been pregnant before, never been anyone's mother. She didn't know if she'd be good at it. What if I mess it up? She asked Ryan one night, her hand on her barely there belly. Then we'll mess it up together. That's not comforting. It's honest. Ryan put his hand over hers. Nobody knows what they're doing, Emily. We all just figure it out as we go. You're good with Michaela. I made so many mistakes with Michaela in the beginning. I still make mistakes. But we figure it out together. What if the baby doesn't like me? Babies don't work like that. What if I don't bond with it right away? What if I'm not... Emily. Ryan turned her to face him. You're going to be an amazing mother. You've been mothering half the kids in this town for years. That's different. Not as different as you think. Their son was born in December, 3 weeks early and completely healthy. They named him James, after Emily's father, who died when she was young. He had Ryan's eyes and Emily's stubborn chin and a cry that could wake the dead. Emily fell in love instantly, which surprised her. She'd expected it to take time, expected to struggle. But the moment the nurse placed James in her arms, Emily felt something click into place. This was her family. Not perfect, not traditional, not what she'd imagined when she was young, but hers. Michaela was obsessed with her baby brother, constantly wanting to help feed him or change him or just stare at him while he slept. She appointed herself his official protector and took the job very seriously. Margaret came to visit every day, bringing food and wisdom and stories about when Ryan was a baby. He was colicky, she told Emily while holding James. Cried for 3 months straight. I thought I was going to lose my mind. That's not helping, Grandma, Ryan said from the doorway. I'm just saying you survived. Emily will survive. Those early months were hard. Emily was exhausted, overwhelmed, constantly second-guessing herself. Ryan was patient and helpful, but he was also running a company and raising Michaela and trying to keep their life from falling apart. They fought sometimes, snapped at each other over stupid things because they were both running on 3 hours of sleep, cried over spilled milk, literally, when Emily knocked over a bottle of pumped breast milk and sobbed like her heart was breaking. But they also figured it out, learned to ask for help, learned to accept help when it was offered, learned that marriage wasn't about being perfect, it was about showing up for each other even when things were hard. On James's first birthday, Emily stood in the backyard of the Victorian and watched her family. Ryan was grilling burgers while Michaela tried to teach Princess to fetch. James was in his high chair, covered in cake, laughing hysterically. Margaret was taking pictures, chronicling every moment. Sarah came to stand beside Emily. You happy? Emily thought about the question. Was she happy? She was tired. She was stressed about money sometimes, even though Ryan insisted they had plenty. She was worried about being a good mother, a good wife, a good librarian. She was still scared sometimes that this would all disappear. But she was also content in a way she'd never been before. She had a family, a home, a life that felt full and rich and worth living. Yeah, Emily said, I'm happy. Good, you deserve it. So do you, Sarah shrugged. I'm working on it. That night, after everyone had left and the kids were asleep, Emily and Ryan sat on their porch and watched the stars.
Remember when you came back to Pine Hollow? Emily asked. How could I forget? Did you think we'd end up here? Honestly, I had no idea. I just knew I had to try. Emily leaned her head on his shoulder. Glad you tried. Me too. Even though I made it difficult?
Especially because you made it difficult. Easy things don't mean as much. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from years of knowing someone, of learning their rhythms and patterns and quirks. Can I tell you something? Emily said. Anything. I used to think success meant escaping, getting out of Pine Hollow, seeing the world, becoming someone important, and when I couldn't do that, I thought I'd failed. And now I think success is just building a life that feels like home, wherever that is, whatever that looks like. Ryan kissed the top of her head. You're pretty wise, you know that? I have my moments. More than moments. Emily smiled. We did okay, didn't we? For two people who had no idea what they were doing. We did better than okay. Yeah, Emily agreed, we really did. Years passed. Michaela went to high school, then college. She came home for holidays and brought friends who marveled that her dad was a billionaire living in a tiny Georgia town. James grew into a curious, energetic kid who loved books as much as his mother and building things as much as his father. Ryan's company continued to thrive, though he'd long since stopped measuring success in dollars. The library became a cornerstone of the community, hosting events and programs that brought people together. Emily never became rich by conventional standards. She still worried about money sometimes, still clipped coupons and shop sales. But she learned to let Ryan help without feeling like she was giving up some essential part of herself. They fought sometimes, had bad days, struggled with the same issues many couples struggled with: money, time, how to raise kids, how to maintain themselves while building a family. But they also laughed a lot, took walks through town holding hands, read books together on the porch, made love like they had all the time in the world because they did. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Ryan surprised Emily with a trip to Paris, something she'd always wanted but never thought she'd get.
Ryan, we can't afford this, she said, even though by that point they both knew they could. Stop saying we can't afford things. We can afford anything we want. I can't help it. Old habits. Then make new habits. They spent a week in Paris eating croissants and wandering museums and getting lost in neighborhoods where no one spoke English. Emily fell in love with the city, but she was also relieved to come home to Pine Hollow, to their life, to the ordinary beauty of the familiar. On the plane ride back, Emily looked at Ryan and said, "Thank you." For what? For coming back, for staying, for building this life with me, even when I made it harder than it needed to be. Ryan took her hand. You're worth every difficult moment. So are you. When they got home, James ran to meet them at the door, talking a mile a minute about everything that had happened while they were gone. Princess barked and jumped and generally made a nuisance of himself. Margaret had left a casserole in the fridge with instructions to heat it at 350 degrees. It was chaotic and loud and perfect. That night, lying in bed with Ryan beside her, and the sound of James's gentle snoring coming from down the hall, Emily thought about the girl she'd been 12 years ago. Poor, lonely, convinced that her life would never amount to anything because she'd never escaped Pine Hollow. She'd been so wrong. Her life had amounted to everything that mattered. Not because she'd gotten rich or famous or powerful, but because she'd built something real with someone real, because she'd learned to let people in despite the risk, because she'd discovered that sometimes the greatest adventure wasn't escaping your life, it was embracing it. Ryan had taught her that. Or maybe they'd taught each other. Either way, Emily fell asleep that night with a smile on her face, grateful for every scared moment, every difficult conversation, every tear and every laugh that had brought them here. To this life, this love, this imperfect, beautiful, absolutely worth it happiness. And if that wasn't success, Emily didn't know what was.